Welcome to Diced Onion, a Warrior podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Angelo Fioris. That's Mike Haggerty, and we welcome you to another exciting edition of our episode by episode look of the incredible show Warrior. And Mikey, we are up to the finale of season 2.
Yeah, I can't believe it. Up to another season finale already. It just feels like they're just like time in general is just flying by right now.
I know. And this is already our 21st episode if you include the Perry Young episode. So we are now heading, I guess, right into season 3 after this one wraps up.
And hopefully they're heading into season 4.
Yeah, it looks like the rankings on Netflix are very promising. I'm seeing things coming from Europe, which is showing it in the top 3, top 4 in Spain. I saw in Brazil it's doing very well, which makes sense because they love their fighting and their martial arts down there. So things are looking up, Mike, as far as the hopes for Netflix renewing for a season 4.
Yeah, I'd say it does look pretty good. And it seems like they did kind of get what they wanted out of Netflix, kind of a reawakening, a resurgence, and I'm all too happy to see it. So, yeah, let's get that season 4 going, hopefully.
Yeah, a lot of new people are catching on to the show now because it's, in their face when they turn on their start screen on Netflix, whereas before you kind of really had to hear about it. I don't even remember how we heard about the show. I think we just stumbled onto it when looking for something.
Yeah, I can't even really recall, but it is a good show. It's worth watching and it's worth investing in. And we definitely need a season 4. I want to see how the season 3 storylines conclude or at least continue. So
yeah, I can't wait to get into season 3 because it was a great one. But let's wrap up this amazing season 2, Mike. It's the finale, episode 10. It's called Man on the Wall, and it aired December 4th of 2020. And the episode begins with the pre-credit scene, and it's the aftermath of the massive brawl between the Chinese and the Irish. It's the remnants of a bloodbath, Mike.
Yeah, and we see Mai Ling sort of surveying the damage, and she's walking through Chinatown, and she stumble across a mural of her brother.
Yeah. It's great the way they paint the scene here, because as she's kind of surveying, as you said, I wrote the same word down. You can hear like cries. It's eerily quiet, but you can hear cries in the background and wails of pain and occasional dog barking or something. But then, like you said, Mai Ling turns and she sees a mural of Assam up on that wall.
Yeah, she says, "Oh, for God's sakes!"
Yeah, oh, for God's sakes, she says. It's a great visceral reaction from her, right?
Yeah,
because she wasn't expecting to see Assam up there, and then from there it cuts to immediately almost Assam now staring at the same mural.
Yeah, and he's looking at. He almost kind of seems to have the same reaction. He's sort of, I'm guessing, is sort of a bemused but sort of bewildered, like, me kind of quality. I'm the hero.
He doesn't like the spotlight as much as he grabs it.
No, he doesn't. And it kind of just harkening back to season 1 when he first landed, he didn't really want any of this. This all started from, remember, let's go back to season 1. Started looking for his sister. We didn't know her status or anything about her, really.
Right.
And now he's become sort of this living legend superhero figure, at least to the local community.
If he never kicked the crap out of the 3 bulls at the immigration welcome center, Chow never would have seen him in action, and he never would have been sold to the Hop way. So it just goes to show you how important that opening scene of episode 1 was to establishing the entirety of this premise, Mike. But before we digress, let's focus back on Assam now, staring at that wall, right? He goes from kicking the bull's butt in episode 1 to now he's on the wall, and here comes Atoy, kind of, still messed up from her beating that she took from the butchers.
Right. And this is the first time he's seen her, and he has no idea what has happened to her.
Right.
And so he kind of sees that she's banged up, and his attention is diverted away from his mural and him. And we kind of, here we get to see a little bit of the friendship. It's one of the nice elements of the show. Assam and Atoy, they have a closeness. I'd say almost a sibling closeness, maybe something I'm just deep diving here, maybe something that he doesn't have, obviously doesn't have with his sister. So maybe she's like a substitute sister.
Yeah. I was thinking that like a bit of a surrogate sister, except that he had sex with her. So that kind of grosses it all out.
Okay. Well, a surrogate sister, maybe in some states.
in Alabama. He's a surrogate sister. But anyway, they're both looking up at the mural now, and Atoy likes it. She says that's a really, really good likeness of you. Assam tries to make light of it. He says it's just a painting. Besides, the nose is too big or something. He says.
Yeah,
But Atoy knows what he's doing, like trying to deflect, and she's very clear about it. She's like, dude, you are a symbol to these people now, just as you had mentioned a minute ago, Mike. He's a symbol now to these people. He's the hero. Remember, they were watching him in the previous episode from the terraces above while he was kicking butt down on the street. And that's when, like, everybody took note of his prowess.
right. And Atoy, ever savvy, she realizes that I think she says something to him along the lines like, "This is an opportunity."
This is an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, whether you want it or not, you're a hero. And he goes, "I'm no hero." And then this kind of a repeated line here that was sort of paraphrased from another episode.
Yeah.
She goes, "That's what all heroes say." But if you harken back a couple episodes ago, I don't remember exactly which one, but it was the one with Leary when he's talking to Buckley, and Buckley encourages him to go into politics.
It's just what a politician would say.
Right.
None of the good ones know that they are.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a paraphrase line here. But
yeah, it's a good point, Mike. The other part is that she also, because she is so wise, I guess, and she understands the situation in Chinatown, right? She also says to him, you can win a war or end one.
Right.
And he says, I'm not a leader. Young June calls the shots.
Right. And then she says, but he doesn't have his face on a wall.
It's such a great line, and it really hammers home his ascension to almost the top. He's almost a shadow puppet master right now. And maybe even unbeknownst to himself, unbeknownst to young June in a way, but it's still happening.
Yeah.
This is where Atoy then changes the subject a little bit and tells of how Mai Ling saved her.
Yeah.
In the brothel when she was all beat up and I guess in worse shape than what we're looking at her at this moment.
Yeah. We remember how banged up she was. That was quite a fight. And Assam is clearly caught off guard without really saying much. He's kind of conveying like, wow. So, I mean, we know that like the previous episode that was quite a shift, a paradigm shift, I want to say. And we'll see how long it lasts as we go through this episode where they were all unified. As they said, they were no longer Tongs. They were just Chinese at this point.
Right.
And even Atoy and Mai Ling, who have at best a complicated relationship, who they both acknowledge, Mai Ling came to her defense. And now Assam is seeing Mai Ling in a different light, but maybe a different light, but the light that he saw her in before.
He already knew that Mai Ling, right?
Yeah.
That's the glimpses of the Mai Ling he knew. This Mai Ling that's, a mobster is not the Mai Ling he knew. So for him, I felt like, Mike, you make an excellent point there. I felt like it was that little bit of hope that, hey, my Mai Ling is, or whatever his sister's name was, I forget now, Chun Chao. She's still in there. She's still inside this Mai Ling character. One other thing that, as Assam shows his surprise at Mai Ling's charity towards Atoy also adds that because of the situation in Chinatown and how combative their life is, none of us can be our best selves in Chinatown. We need a hero. And that's when she tells him, you could be that guy. And he says, no, I'm not the hero. And that's where the scene ends. It's a very good scene. It's kind of, I don't know, it establishes a lot for what we're about to see.
Yeah, and what you said earlier too, just going back to the first scene of the first episode, how it just created that thread that led into this and into all of this. And it's a testament to the writing of the show. I can't say enough good things about the writing.
Yeah.
We always focus on the acting and the actors, but the writers, without them, there's nothing. There's nothing. So
they feed the lines, right? They're the creators of the tale, and the actors are just they're the implements of delivery, right? And they're awesome. Everybody's awesome. You can see why this show is so good. And it sounds like we sound like a broken record sometimes because we harp on the writing pretty often. But that is really what makes the show. You could have all these great actors and give them a lousy script, and it's going to be a lousy show no matter how good they are and no matter how hard they try to turn, to put lipstick on a pig, so to speak. let's get out of the opening scene, cut right out of the credits, opening credits, and we're in the police station, and Officer Lee quits.
Yeah, he's jaded. And but my here's my question: is he more jaded with the system or with Bill?
He's had enough all around. I think this was just kind of the last straw, what went down in Chinatown and how they handled it and how Bill has been handling himself. And some of that comes out in this conversation between them. Even Bill will initially admit his um, shortcomings, if you will. So Lee drops his badge on the desk and he's like, this isn't for me. And he's off. He's already halfway down the
Right.
stairs when Bill chases him down. To convince him to try to stay. Bill wants him to stick around.
Right. And Bill kind of he uses the tact of there's a chance to do good. He goes like he admits to the whole system is shady and corrupt and what have you, but he says there's still a chance to do good. It makes me wonder too about Bill because is this Bill trying to convince Lee or trying to convince himself? Or is again, like you just said, we saw a shade or a glimpse of the previous My Ling. Was this a glimpse of Bill's morality?
This is the same Bill we have seen, excuse me, for 20 episodes, Mike. He's been trying to convince himself since day one. So that hasn't changed, right? So in a way, while he tries to connive, let's face it, connive Lee into staying, he's also fooling himself in many ways. He said, and Lee throws it back in his face because when he says a chance to do good, a chance to keep the peace, and Lee says, and also in line in your own pockets. So clearly Lee is, like you said, jaded with Bill, jaded with the gig. He's not into really doing or operating the way the SFPD likes to operate.
Right. And I feel like, this whole show really in a way it is a morality play. And it's about characters looking for redemption. And I think that's kind of the beauty of the show because you're rooting for them. I'm even rooting for My Ling. I want My Ling and Assam to be brother and sister and be arm in arm. And I want Bill and I want Lee to be friends. And I want, we're rooting for that. I'm rooting for all of them. And that's part of the beauty of the show too.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the stage where Lee's just about out the door and Bill says to him, "You're a cop, man. We need you. Don't quit." And Lee is not convinced, so Bill tries to hit him with one of his own. He reverses the tables and tries to hit Lee with like a down home or a homespun saying to make one more last point. What does he say? He says, "You can teach a pig to hunt, but that don't make him a dog." And Lee says, "What does that even mean?" And Bill's answer was, "It means you're a cop, and that's what you'll always be." But Lee still leaves. He's not having it, is he, Mike?
No, no. Lee is beyond saving his career, right? At least for the moment.
Yeah, he's not feeling it. He's out the door, no longer a police officer. Bill is left holding Lee's badge in his hand, and he is one excellent cop short on his staff. The best cop he's got just walked out the door. That's why Bill was so anxious to get him to stay. But that's over for now.
Yeah, he's a great investigator, and yeah, he should want him to stay. And
Yeah, exactly.
I think Bill was trying to make the case that they still do good work. I mean, they got rid of the Feng Hai. They didn't get rid of him in the most ethical way, and they didn't get rid of him for perhaps the right reasons. But still, they got rid of a violent gang. And I think that's Bill's point of view. Like the ends justify the means, and that's not quite sitting well with Lee.
No, it's not sitting well with anyone who's really in the know because they know that Bill was serving himself first in the elimination of the Feng Hai, then law and order, keep the peace, and everything else that kind of follows behind that. So we leave the
right.
Yeah,
I was going to say he did the right thing for not necessarily the right reasons.
Yeah, it's a byproduct of his motives is the right thing coming out of it. Because if the wrong thing would have come out of it, Bill still would have done it.
Right.
Yeah. We cut away now to Hopway headquarters, and we got young June and Father June outside, and they are talking about everything that just went down in Chinatown.
Yeah, and this was one of my favorite scenes of this episode because we saw the father-son bond. Since last week, we've seen their relationship evolve, right? Everyone's relationships are evolving. Lee and Bill's is a little bit worse, but young June and Father June, their relationship's a little bit better, a little more father-son. And
Is it better, or is there just some understanding now?
Well, maybe it's the romantic in me. I want to believe that that they're having a Mike and Greg Brady moment here.
Daddy, that ain't happening here, dude.
I guess I'm putting my romantic spin on it, but either way, Father June is giving us some sage advice.
Right.
They're talking about, obviously, what happened last week was a game changer, at least uh, for Chinatown, because I think everyone's looking at everyone a little bit differently. Because again, they had to come together. But now
Right.
we'll see in this episode: do they stay together or do they go back to their old ways? And that's
Yeah.
I have a feeling this is what it's going to be about. But Father June is giving him some advice. And sorry, go
No, I
ahead.
was going to say, we also see while he's giving him advice that young June has evolved even just a little bit here, because he makes a statement to Father June where he says, you know, you can't fight back against a city or a country. And Father June says, wow, I am relieved to hear you say that. And then that's when he gives him the advice of picking your battles.
Yeah, sometimes the battles you choose not to fight are just as important as the ones you do fight.
Yeah, that's good advice for all of us, actually, Mike. Um, and this is where, oddly enough, young June, he must be feeling the instant weight of his new position, because he turns around and apologizes to Father June for how everything went down. And I thought that was kind of, for someone who talks about strength, I thought that was kind of weak from young June.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That's that father-son bond. See, I told you. They're gonna go.
He was half a step away from tears in his eyes.
They're gonna go have a catch.
Let's toss the sword around, son.
They're gonna have a nice father-son catch out back any moment. I'm sure of it.
Well, Father June responds with a very poignant answer when young June apologizes. I didn't mean for it to go this way. And Father June says, well, maybe that was the fight we both needed. And I thought that was a very great line. And then this is where Father June confesses where, he enjoyed the scrap, right? And inside he feels like he's 22 and he can kick butt, but the truth is that he's 70 or however old he is. And how did he put it? That's a dangerous combination.
Yeah, for a man his age, that is a dangerous combination.
Right. For a man his age, it's a dangerous combination. I thought that was another great line.
Yeah.
Young June says to him, it's good to have you back.
But he ain't back.
He ain't back. And he says it to him straight up. I'm not back. It's your show now.
Yeah, this scene also is about Father June coming to terms with that he's no longer the boss, and he's made peace with that.
Yeah, he's a lot calmer. He's a lot calmer than we've seen him in most of the episodes. And he leaves young June with one last piece of advice before the scene closes.
Go ahead.
I'll take it if you want.
Yeah,
you know that feeling that you're feeling right now, he says to young June? Learn to live with it. So it's that, the buck stops with the boss. That's true in business. That's true in underworld crime.
Heavy is the head.
And he is the boss now. And so careful what you wish for, little boy, because the weight of it may crush you. So we'll see.
Like the often butchered line from Shakespeare, and I'm about to butcher too. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, which I know is not the. I think it's a little bit different, but I don't want to go down the Shakespeare rabbit hole because I'm not that good.
Because I don't either.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I'm not super sharp on, it's my Shakespeare. I don't know enough to carry on a full-on conversation. So maybe that's the line. Maybe it's a little different. One of our viewers will definitely chime in the comments and give us the correction, because I don't feel like looking it up. All right, we cut away now to Buckley, and he is at the he's at that gentleman's club where all the businessmen go and the mayor and the politicians gather, and he is railing against Chinese labor to the leaders of business.
Right, and this has been the ongoing theme of, well, really the whole show, really. And this is sort of serves as the fuse for the tension. I want to say not just the Chinese and the Irish, but really for everyone.
Yeah,
right. It's always
building.
Right. This is the undercurrent of the show, and I mean, really, it boils down to what we've been talking about, and what we still talk about today, for that matter, in today's society, is the cost of cheap labor keeping costs down, right? I mean,
Yeah.
no one wants to pay a high price for a product, so we like cheap prices, and that's really what's going on here. And Buckley and the businessmen, they have converging. That's where their conflict is, because Buckley wants one thing, and the businessman want another thing, and
Can I
where the
digress for a minute? I just find it really interesting. I guess I never put this together until you said what you said a moment ago, Mike, which is um, no one likes to pay a lot for product. So cheap labor is the way to keep costs down, which these businessmen in 1878 clearly are aware of. Now, fast forward to 2024, and here we are still looking to pay cheap prices for Chinese products.
yeah.
It's a really weird parallel or full circle or whatever you want to call it. And I didn't connect that until now. Let's get back to the businessmen, though. They're unhappy with Buckley's position, aren't they? Like,
Yeah.
like very outwardly unhappy.
Yeah, oh, they're letting him know, and we're seeing the power brokers ride money in politics,
Yeah.
and again, a lot of this show, this could be taking place, like you said, in 2024, and it would make just as much sense.
Yeah, this is
And
behind the scenes stuff that's happening every day.
yeah, the machinations of the political underworld, and kind of like, this reminds me of The Wire too, and I'm not going to go
Mm.
down the Wire rabbit hole. With The Wire, I'm one of those nerds. I'm a Wire nerd.
Yeah, it's a good show. I love
Yeah,
that show.
and the way they showed how politics and the underworld and the legitimate world were all really tied together, and in ways that perhaps before that show, well, I know I didn't, but perhaps others didn't realize how connected they really are. And this show does that too, perhaps as well as The Wire did. But
Mike,
The Wire is the Hall of Fame right now.
Mike, I will say that that's a great point. And we, as society, as lay people, as the law and order type folks, right, the ones who abide by the rules and kind of just go about our day, we do not realize how close and how often we are in contact with the underground who's running the show, whether it's the dirty mobsters or the underground or the mob, whoever it is that's got something. We're part of that. Our money, all circles around and changes hands. And you don't know what store you're buying something from that the mob's controlling or getting protection from. You don't know what product you're buying that was run through some back door and fell off of a truck and that kind of thing. So we, as just, consumers and citizens, are an important cog in the wheel of everything that goes on behind the scenes, Mike.
Yeah.
Without us,
Yeah.
none of this matters.
Right.
Yeah.
None of it matters. And yeah, you made a really interesting point right now. Like, we're the ones that want the cheap products. So I mean,
they're
and,
serving
and
us in a way, right?
right. And I'm going to imagine that let's take this a little bit further here for a second. Let's say the Irish citizens of this world in Warrior, they don't want to pay a lot for the products that they're buying, whatever it may be, or whatever. And the Chinese labor is making that happen. So they're a participant in their own occupational demise. Let's say
That's a
could
great.
be.
That's a great point. It's almost like they're trapped in a circle, right? And they like can't get out of it because it's a cycle that, well, if we get the pay, then the prices go up. If they get the pay, the prices stay low, but we don't got no money. So it's a weird place to be in.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And you could see how that adds to the simmering of what's going on, right? It's a pot filled with a lot of different things. And right now it's on a low simmer, but the boil is coming. At this point, now let's get back to Buckley and the business owners. Now that we've established a ton of context, the businessmen are like, you know what? This doesn't sound like the kind of mayor that's, worthy of our support. And one gets up to leave, and Buckley says to him, maybe you need to sit back down, because as soon as you realize that we're actually on the same team, we can talk deal. All of a sudden, like, deal? The tone changes immediately as soon as he says that. Everybody sits back down and they're ready to start talking. And Buckley mentioned something about how they will, in exchange for their support, I guess it was like tax advantages that they would receive to offset their future labor cost problems.
Yeah, well, we know that Buckley, if nothing else, he is a negotiator. If nothing else, he may not win an ethics award, but he will sit down and he will break bread and he will make a deal.
Right.
If nothing else, right? And
Yeah.
we know, we take it for granted that he is smarter than Mayor Blake was, right? As the power behind the throne.
Take it for granted. No, we know it. We saw it for 18 episodes.
Yeah. So here's Buckley in his element. You think, just when you think it's kind of going against him, the tide. I mean, just like when we see Assam in a fight and against someone who's maybe a little tough, right?
Yeah.
Like when he took on Bolo,
Right.
But you know that Assam is going to, at least at the time I knew Assam was going to defeat Bolo.
Of course.
And in this case, similar, we know Buckley is going to come back just kind of Assam, but with his words and with his brain instead.
Yeah, Buckley has a game plan. He's playing the long game. He's not just in the moment. He's got things happening that are going to affect 2 months, 6 months, a year down the line, especially now as he is the mayor and has an opportunity to keep that seat. I believe he mentioned a few episodes back when Blake was still alive that there's an election coming. So Buckley is going to have to focus on
keeping
his power, because if he doesn't win this election, he won't be in City Hall at all anymore.
No.
Just when you thought the conversation was going smoothly between the businessmen and they were going to get to some sort of agreement, in comes Mrs. Blake, and she's not happy, is she?
No, and I especially love the interplay between Buckley and Penny because, at least with me, instinctively, I want to side with Penny. I've always called her and Lee the moral center of the show. But as you see their dialogue and the way they talk to each other, and I gotta say, I'm seeing Buckley's point of view here in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
because Buckley's making some interesting points here, and
it's the way he talks.
Right. And like she blames him for the death of her
Jacob.
Jacob. I'm sorry, I drew a blank there. She's blaming him for the death of Jacob, and he's like, well, without him, you'd be on trial for murder right now.
You let it happen. That he didn't kill Blake. Do I? He goes.
But he did. Actually, he did.
He did know. But he plays dumb very conveniently.
Right. And he points out to her that without him, you would be on trial right now.
When she yells about Jacob, he has another great line. And he says to her, lower your voice if you don't want people to hear you mourning the wrong man, grieving the wrong man. And she gives him a little bit of crap because he could have stopped it, she feels, and she puts it on him, but he's not having any of that.
No, he says he basically points out that she's now the inheritor of her husband's estate. He goes, if you'd like to thank me, just pull up and have a drink. He's basically saying to her, without Jacob, you'd be on trial right now, but instead you're not on trial and you've just gotten a lot of money.
And like you said, from the jump with this conversation, he's making excellent points that she really needs to listen and put her emotions aside for a moment. Yeah, Jacob's dead and it's horrible. And yeah, he got railroaded and framed. And anyone who has any knowledge of the situation understands this. But at the same time, she's ignoring other aspects, right? The reality of this, right? She lost her factory, right? Her relationship with her sister is done. Her father is dead. Jacob is dead. Her husband is dead. She doesn't have much else other than her convictions and her whatever she's inheriting now from Blake. So he punctuates the conversation with be a good widow and go home.
and I gotta say that I don't like it, but I kind of have to side with Buckley on this one a little bit, because Buckley, if you think about it, he kind of saved her bacon, really.
Yeah. I like the line when she comes in all angry and he says, I used to like coming here because no one bothered me. So Buckley then says, after he tells her that she should go, he calls one of the other guys to come escort her. Take Mrs. Blake. She's obviously, distraught. Take her to her carriage. And she says, I'm fine. I don't need any help. And she tries to threaten him a little bit here on the way out the door, doesn't she?
Yeah, she says something like, "I'm fine," and or she says, "You like to stay in the shadows." I think I took it like she's threatening to kind of out him.
Yeah, she says, you like to hide behind the scenes pulling all of the strings, but we'll see how you like it when someone pulls your strings.
Yeah,
That's a threat. And
yeah,
Buckley's not going to take well to any threats. And that is where the scene ends.
yeah,
It's a good scene, man. It's a strong scene.
yeah. It
Buckley,
really made me think.
yeah, Buckley stands his ground. And again, he's not your favorite character on this show, but he's a strong character. And I like that.
Yeah.
All right. We got Assam and Young June. They're at Toys. They're standing up top there, and it's pretty quiet in there. It's not the toys that we're familiar with. It's not raucous or jumping by any stretch.
No, and at this point in Chinatown, they're probably everyone's just sort of licking their wounds and trying to just get back to some semblance of normalcy. So I'd imagine that everything from a toys business to the fruit stands, everyone's just sort of picking up the pieces right now, and it's for the moment at least not going to be business as usual for anyone.
I kind of likened it, Mike, that scene the next day where they're like at toys and there's no action happening and it's really slow and quiet. It reminded me a bit of how things were in those first couple of days after 9/11 here in our area in New York City.
Yeah,
Remember how like no one wanted to like go bowling or go out. You understand what I'm saying? Like our enthusiasm for fun was tempered. And that's
yeah.
what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing here. People are a little too affected by the goings ons to really let loose.
That's an interesting point. I think it's a valid point too. Certainly after the war, you don't necessarily feel like celebrating, uh,
No,
even if you
victorious or
won.
not. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So
Exactly. Now they're talking Assam and Young June about the battle. And Assam just throws it right out there. He's like, hey, Father June saved your ass.
yeah, and a lot of well, it seems like every scene now with young June really kind of revolves around his father, and I think this is about the coming to terms as we've been talking about it, sort of the transition of you now become the leader, and I think everything is sort of about that, but it's also about his relationship with his father, and here's where I get some sense of reverence towards his father because. Young June is talking about how when he's there and that asshole, quote unquote, had the gun pointed at him, and he goes, I knew I was done. He says,
Right.
I sensed death, and that's when Father June came out and saved him. And Sam says something, and there was a good line here too, where young June says, "Sometimes I think he popped out of the womb with that dead eye and that beard, just
That
calling the
little beard.
shots."
Yeah, calling the shots. But the other thing that Young June says that's very pointing here, Mike, is that when he describes the scene where Father June saved his ass, he says, it's like he knew I'd need him to bail me out, right? When he showed up. And I thought that was that's when he says the line about, I feel like he came out with the dead eye and that little beard calling the shots right straight out of the room, straight out of the womb. So it's a funny line as well. And again, like you said, it's all part of this transition now, right? Father June's transitioning, and now Young June's transitioning. We're past the Young June's high from the unplanned takeover, right? And now reality is setting in here, and
Right,
he's in charge for like a day, and there was a huge war,
right, and also we're getting a real sense of young June being humble now, which is the first time that I think we're seeing that
and
in this,
insecure,
and it's secure because he says flat out, he goes, I don't know that I'll be the leader that he was. And
right?
I don't know if that's something that he would have said perhaps maybe 5 episodes ago.
That's a
But
good
here
point.
is he's saying it. And the weight of the position, like we said, and I think there's come a sense of humility from it. And also a reverence for his father. I think this has been very transitional for young June, and it's perhaps made him a more sympathetic character, or at least a more mature character.
More mature. He's definitely evolved in a couple of ways. With great power comes great responsibility. And before he didn't have the power, he was just being the hatchet guy and, maybe the right hand man to his father, but he was not calling any shots. Now he
Right.
calls them. And in that vein, he then transitions the conversation away from Father June to Mai Ling. And he tells Assam that Mai Ling reached out. She wants to talk. And Assam says, what are you going to do?
Well, he's not. This is where we see the old young June, or where
Yes.
he's kind of cocky, and he's basically, I'm going to tell her what her. He goes, I'll listen, but I'm not going to
But tell
take
her
any.
how it's going to be,
Yeah.
he says.
Mm.
Yeah. The scene ends now with at least kind of a humorous moment where he says, it doesn't feel right getting sticky in Atoy's place, the shape she's in, all banged up like that. But I'm still going to do it. I'll just enjoy it less, right? Like you could actually will yourself to enjoy it less. Like maybe he'll choose his number 4 on the list of girls. I tried to imagine how would you enjoy it less by choosing like the less desirable girl, I guess. Assam leaves to go tend to Atoy. He wants to go help her, and again, right? It hammers home the fact that these two have become excellent friends, almost on a sibling caring kind of level, and that's when Nellie Davenport shows up.
Yeah, and there was a good line here too between her and Assam, which I got to kick. You know what I'm going to say?
Yeah,
and where she says, "You speak English," and he goes, "Yeah, and you mangle Cantonese," because we really, I mean, as people who do not speak Cantonese, we really have no sense of how any of this sounds, really.
Right.
And so now we learn for the first time, just this one little tidbit here that Nellie, yeah, she can speak Cantonese, but she apparently doesn't speak it well. So
right.
That's just a little interesting little nugget, not a big deal, but just something else we learned.
Like me trying to speak Spanish. Donde está Casa de Pepe? That's how Nellie must sound to the native Cantonese speakers. But this is where, she goes over to Atoy. She's showing her concern. Assam is kind of eyeing this up, and he's putting 2 and 2 together rather quickly. He's not a dummy.
Right. Yeah, he knows that they're more than friends.
Yeah, he figures it out. He says something like, "Oh, this makes perfect sense."
Yeah. And he's kind of like a third wheel in the scene. He quickly becomes a third wheel.
Wow, and you could feel it too, right? It's like palpable in an instant. And I don't know if it's the actors being so good at shifting the tone with their mannerisms and their words, because Nellie and Atoy are very close here in the bed, and she insists on staying to help. But she says, Atoy says something very funny here. She says to Nellie, Nellie says, "I'm not leaving." And Atoy says, "Well, you wouldn't go anyway." But then she says, "I'll die here before I die in some white lady's house," because Nellie wanted to take her or something.
Yeah, over to what was it? I forget the name of where she lives. It escapes me at the moment.
In Sonoma, you mean?
Sonoma.
Yeah, she wants to take her to Sonoma.
Okay, yeah.
The scene closes here. Assam leaves. That's where he's like, "All right, I'll check on you tomorrow," and he takes off. And Nellie and Atoy are very close now, and it's a hesitant moment for Atoy. She's still trying to resist a little bit, right? And she's like, "You don't know me." Again with the "you don't know me,"
right?
And Nellie says, "I think I do."
Right, and I think Nellie's motives are pure here. Nellie doesn't have any ulterior motive.
She's not agenda driven at all.
No, not at all. She apparently she has very strong feelings for Atoy, and I think Atoy has the same feelings for her. Although going back to what was it, 2 episodes ago, with her partner Patterson, when she realized that she could use Nellie as an ends to someone to just co-sign her loans, which I think Atoy, again, looking at sort of the bottom line there, but. I don't doubt Nellie's feelings towards Atoy for one moment. She's
as genuine a character as there is on this show.
Yeah. Now I'll add her to my
moral center list.
Yeah, my my rogues gallery of people with moral center on this show.
Right on. So this is where the scene ends. Nellie and Atoy. Assam's out of there. We're now at Hopway headquarters, and this is a big scene, Mike. Mai Ling and Li Yang at the feet, in a sense, of Young Jun. And Assam is there as well. And Young Jun is enjoying his position of having the upper hand here, isn't he? And he's breaking her balls a little bit, ain't he?
Yeah, he's acting like Vito Corleone at his daughter's wedding. He's all but got the cat on the desk, petting the cat and listening, and and Mai Ling is coming there, seemingly hat in hand. She does seem
Right.
a little bit humble, but but
So
is Mai Ling.
yeah, she's my Ling. Exactly.
She's Mai Ling, and she's never going to truly. She can never be subservient to anyone, even with someone who might temporarily have the upper hand.
Yeah.
Um,
And she tries to be contrite here
right. Well,
because
I don't know if she's being trying to be contrite. I think she's using contrite like the
she's
carrot.
feigning contrite. How about
Right.
that?
Yeah, she's feigning it.
Yeah, she's feigning contrite. This is where she says to young June, we need to maybe, after what happened in Chinatown, sort of band together a bit. And he brings up the Feng Hai, and she says, all right, admittedly, the Feng Hai were a mistake. And Young June follows with, and suddenly you're here to pay respect.
Again, Young June is flexing, but I through this scene, I got the sense that anytime Mai Ling is in a scene, I don't care who she's with, she is sort of, maybe with the exception of Toy, she is a step ahead. She's like Buckley,
Right.
always a step ahead of the person that they're dealing with. And I'm getting the same sense here. This is a very important scene, a very interesting scene.
Oh, yeah.
But even before the scene ends, in my head, I'm watching like, yeah, Mai Ling, it looks like she doesn't have the upper hand, but she's going to have the upper hand.
Yeah, she may not have upper hand, but she has something up her sleeve.
Yeah. Okay. Even better. Well put.
She has something up her sleeve. And I think that she, depending on how this conversation went, was going to determine whether she played that card or played a different card. And she, again, tries to convince Young June that she's looking for peace. And this is where she throws in a line that throws everything askew.
She goes, I just don't want to be at war with my brother anymore.
Who the fuck are you saying? I'm not your brother. I'm not your fucking brother, Young June says. And when Young June says that, right, that's when Mai Ling, like, now you talk about feigning, right, and faking out. She, this is awkward. Like, did you not tell? Oh, they don't know. Like, it's one of those, like, she's playing stupid, but she knows exactly what she's doing right now. And you could see Assam's face, and Young June's like, his wheels are turning. He's like, what the F are you talking about?
Right.
What the F is she talking about? They show Assam, and he's like, speechless.
Perhaps my favorite reaction to this is Han, who's eating a dumpling or whatever.
What?
He's like, oh shit. Like, he puts it together because he's got to know that he's not her brother, and he's got to know that Young June is certainly not her brother. So he's putting this together. Yeah, he probably figured it out before Young June did.
You're absolutely right.
I love Han. I'm sorry, he's like my favorite comedic character in the show. He always brings the laughs. I love him.
So this is where the scene kind of changes now, where Young June's like, all right, I had enough of this. And he says to the other guys, get them the F out of here, meaning Li Yang and Mai Ling. So they're on their way out. And as they exit, Mai Ling's got that wry smile on her face, like she just scored a win. And Li Yang says, what the hell was that?
Right.
Could have told me, at least.
And we've seen this between them before as well,
Yeah.
where she is not keeping him entirely in the loop. And is that a matter of she doesn't trust him entirely? I want to say, yeah, actually.
I think she's smart, Mike, in that the more you keep close to the vest, the less you let out in terms of plans, the less likely these plans can be found out and, stopped.
But she also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You say it.
But she also says, he goes, well, you could have told me or something like that. And she goes, honestly, I didn't know I was going to do it. So then again, there's that. So I just destroyed my own argument.
No, it's all right though, because, she might have pulled a Hail Mary, but she's not the most upfront person either. She could be BSing Li Yang here as well. She has been stringing him along a bit. So it wouldn't be a surprise if she actually was planning to do it. Right. That's where that little exchange ends, and we're back inside, and it's Young June and it's Assam, and they're shouting it out right now. You're her brother. What? I didn't say we were close.
Which was funny.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, fuck you, when he says that.
Yeah, F you, he says to him, right. And Young June again, he's right back to I don't want to hear it. Hong tries to keep the peace though here.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, Assam is pointing out correctly. He goes, "I am your brother," and he's pointing out their history, and he's not wrong. And then Hong, like you said, he's the voice of reason here, which usually from a character we don't expect that from Hong to be the voice of reason. But here he goes, "For what it's worth, I believe him. Let's all just sit down, have a dumpling, and we'll talk this out."
Start talking, Young
Yeah,
June says.
yeah.
Scene quickly cuts away here. That's where it stops. We don't get to hear what Assam is saying because Mrs. Blake is not finished and she's trying to up her offensive against Buckley. And she pops in on a reporter for the newspaper to try to give him the scoop, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's realized that she only has a few avenues available to her to get the upper hand on Buckley. And
I think this is a dumb move by her personally.
I do tend to agree with you, but at the same token, I'm like, well, really, what else can she do? I mean, she could let it leave. She could
Go
let it
home
lie.
with a pile of money and big house is what she could do.
And she could also look at it like I said, like we all like Jacob, but he did kill the mayor. He did. It's not like he was framed. And I mean, his ending was not just. He deserved a trial at least. But at the same token, like I said, Buckley kind of has a point.
Yeah.
And so, but tell me, why do you think this was a dumb move?
Because for someone like Penny, she's not a dummy. She understands. She lived in the house with the mayor, so she understands the city hall inner workings. She had to know that the newspapers may not be the best place to turn when you're trying to out a local politician who's got the power. That's just kind of how I felt. I was like, oh, this is not really a great idea. That's just how I felt.
Interesting.
And it's a very short scene. It just establishes the fact that she is not finished yet. And she's got plans, but the scene ends very quickly. We're back to Hopway headquarters, the drama of Young June trying to reconcile the fact that Assam is Mai Ling's brother, and he's not sure what to make of it. I think you've been trying to play both sides the whole time, he said to her.
Man. And I think in this scene, I was, maybe perhaps I wasn't the only one. I was trying to put myself in Young June's shoes. I was trying to look at it from his perspective, right?
Yeah.
Here's a guy who's been my right hand, and they probably arguably had the most uncomplicated relationship in the show. They were friends. They're in the same tongue. Very simple dynamic. I got your back, you got my back. And Assam is pointing out correctly all the things that he's done for the Tong. He almost got killed by Li Young in front of his eyes.
Right. He rationalizes the situation now. He's trying to analyze what went down, and he kind of lists all of Assam's actions and activities since he arrived on the scene.
Right. And when I put myself in Li Young's shoes, here's what I keep coming back to. I'm like, yeah, I believe him. I believe Assam. He has been on our side.
Young June, you mean, not Li Young.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm putting myself in Young June's shoes. And I'm like, well, Assam's been on our side, been on our team. He almost died for us.
Right.
But then I also come back to, well, but again, he is her brother. And even though she did try to have him killed, those family bonds, sometimes they can be strong. You never really know.
Right.
So I could see where Young June is kind of in an impossible situation here, or a difficult situation.
It's a tight spot. It's a big test for such a early stage of his tenure.
Right. Very, very difficult thing to encounter, especially at the very opening, the genesis of his leadership. So I don't know if they consciously, I mean, I don't know, when you watch this, were you kind of like trying to put yourself in Young June's shoes, seeing what you would?
Yeah. I mean, I was following him along there, right? I liked that he was trying to be rational about it and trying to lay it all out in front of him before he just made some swift decision here, right? And he even comes to a conclusion where he's like, okay, there was the fight, and then you got kicked out, and you didn't come back begging to be readmitted into the Hopway. You just went about your business. He goes, and for what it's worth, I think I believe you. I mean, until that gun went off, you were going to die, and maybe you are just an asshole with a sister that you hate, and I think she figured that outing you would have been the end of you. So he even puts it together because he knows Mai Ling too.
Right. And this is where he also kind of harkens back to the advice he got earlier from his father. The battles you don't fight are every bit as important as the ones you do.
Yeah, that pick your battles advice comes right back. And again, I wrote down here, Young June gaining wisdom.
We're seeing the maturity or the maturation of Young June here.
Young Jun states to Assam that he feels like they've been through way too much for him, meaning Assam, to have any loyalty to Mai Ling. But I don't think he's 100% sure about Assam right now. He's questioning things internally.
Right, because this is where he says to him when it comes down to whether it's her or me, am I making the right choice?
Right.
And
Assam can't even answer really. He gives like a non-committal, when it's down to the Tong or her, will you be able to make the right choice? And he kind of goes,
right. And let's go back to the opening scene with him and Atoy, where she's explaining how Mai Ling helped her.
Right.
Did that play a part in his reasoning right now?
Oh, maybe because again, he saw the glimmer, right, of the old Mai Ling still existing, and now maybe he wouldn't be so quickly to, finish her off. It's a great point too, Mike. After that, Young Jun's like, all right, I'm going to have to think about this. Assam says, don't take too long.
Which I thought that was interesting for him. Like, clear, you're not the boss here. Let's remember that. You are Assam, but you're not the boss. And the boss, as we all know, in organized crime, they're the ones that make the decisions. And sometimes those decisions have repercussions.
I think Assam's point there when he said, don't take too long, was basically, don't leave me twisting in the wind. If you're going to cut this thing off, just do it. All right. Don't like ponder on it for like a week.
Right.
And so he leaves, and Hong, Hong is sort of a voice of reason here. And Assam says, what do you think, Hong? And Hong's like, it's a tricky one. He admits it. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, he says, it's a tricky one, boss. He goes, he lied to you, and I get that. But he's also proven his loyalty over and over again.
So what's the right move, Young Jun says. And Hong's answer is a good one. Maybe there was no right move, and Assam just did what he needed to do regardless.
He said, if you were Assam, what would you have done? Because he knows that if he had told you that, you would have been dead meat right away.
Right. If he would have said, hey, I'm Assam and I'm Mai Ling's brother. Over. Right. Warrior, 2 episodes. Great series.
A mini series.
Yeah. England's longest running show. We're now out of Hopway headquarters and off to the Banshee, where Leary is kind of walking around an empty bar, and he comes to the piano and he sits down, and you could see his face. He's angry. It's a hard anger right here, Mike. He's when he's not screaming and yelling, but you can see his anger, he's steaming.
Right. And he attempts to work that out by playing the piano.
Yeah, Bugs Bunny style. Like pounding it. I mean, he's really like just nailing the keys like with his fists.
Right.
And that's when Bill walks in. You take requests?
Oh man.
Good stuff.
There's always a little humor here.
Yeah, there always is. And Bill says, hey, what do you want? Leary says, and Bill says, I was just stopping in for a drink. At the same time, we cut away, and I like what the editing does here now for the next couple of scenes, Mike, where we are in the bar, Leary and Bill, but then suddenly we see Lee walking into the bar where he initially got rolled, if you recall a few episodes back, where the girl knocked him out, and he got beat up, and they stole his everything. He's back there. So now she sees him right away, and she's concerned.
Right, because I forget, does she know that he's a cop at this point?
She does.
Okay.
Yeah, she does, because she says, I don't want no trouble, right? And she says, this is no place for a cop to him.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. But I'm wondering, why did Lee go back to this bar, of all places?
I think he liked the girl.
Yeah, but a girl that rolled you.
Yeah, well, he's not a cop anymore, so he's trying out his new life.
I don't know. At least, I mean, until I see where this is going. When I first saw it, I'm like, why would he do this?
Right.
Yeah, I get that he's not a cop anymore, and she's an attractive woman, and you guys did have a little bit of a thing for a moment there, but she wasn't being real. She wasn't being genuine. So I'm kind of wondering why he would do this. I get it, but I mean, we'll see as the scene goes on how it plays out.
Yeah. So he says, I need a drink, and she pours him one. And as she pours it to him, and his hand is on the drink, a cool cut, like downward pan, back to the Banshee. So now it's Bill, and he's sort of rationalizing his own actions to Lee, right? You go out there every day, you try to do a good job, you try to do good, all that bullshit that he's been spinning for 20 episodes. He's trying to feed it to Leary, the wrong guy to feed any BS to.
Well, yeah, we do know it's been established Leary is a no BS kind of guy. He's
No.
going to be straight up with you. And yeah, actually, I'll say this for Leary. You actually just made me think of this. There probably is no lying in Leary, which is probably why he
Say
wouldn't
it
be a
again.
good
There's probably no what?
no lying in Leary.
Yeah, that's true. When whatever he says, he means it, and it's never like not like Buckley, who speaks in tongues, right, and has double talk, politician double talk. Leary, who is a burgeoning politician, doesn't know the art of double talk yet. He's just a straight shooter, and he shoots with his mouth and very quickly behind with his fists.
Yeah, and Bill is kind of lamenting. He's kind of being sort of lamenting his life, and Leary again cutting through the BS. He just says right away out of nowhere, which I thought was really interesting. He goes, "She'll come back to you, Bill."
Yeah, he does.
He just kind of like, because Leary wasn't, or I'm sorry, Bill wasn't talking about that, but Leary put that together. I thought that was really interesting, and it shows too that the level of knowledge that they know each other.
They have about each other. At this point, Leary tells Bill it's time for him to go home. And then the scene cuts back to the bar where Lee is, and he's explaining to the girl, they're having small talk. He's explaining why he ain't a cop no more. And he says, he has a great line here, Mike. I don't know if you wrote it down or not. He says,
Go ahead.
cops, they're just broken men in blue suits.
Through every episode, I think there's like a half dozen lines, and I think that would be a good title of the episode. And I think that could have been a good title.
Broken Men in Blue Suits. That's not a bad title at all, Mike. I like it. I like it a lot. And very quickly, back to the broken man in a blue suit named Bill O'Hara. And here he is still talking to Leary. And he's like, I was a better man once.
Yeah, and Leary says we all were.
Right. And so we're back to Bill and his whole, lamentations of his choices to go down the wrong path. Now we're back to Lee. And he's like, I've killed men. So we got confessions happening here now, all of a sudden. And the girl asks him if he regrets it. And Lee's answer was, I wouldn't change a thing about it. Meaning his cousins, right? He killed his cousins in Georgia that we learned about back in season 1.
And Abigail here kind of, now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of reminding me a little bit of Leary. She's like the female Leary because there's no BS in her either. Because Lee is going on about the morality of killing and is it justified? And she says something to the effect of it's justified by whoever holds the gun.
Right.
And she's got like her own little no BS approach to this. So I think there's a similarity with, both Lee and Bill are kind of mournful. They're lamenting their lot in life, their current status in life. And here is in one case, Leary being the you had to do what you had to do, kind of no BS kind of thing. And same thing with Abigail. So I thought there was an interesting interplay here, not just the editing, but again, we've seen a lot of bar scenes where the two scenes that are interplaying are really related.
Yeah, because their conversations are similar. You got Lee not regretting his actions of the past, and you got Bill filled with all this regret, right? And that's all he's talking about. Again, Leary says it's time to go, Bill. So Bill gets up to leave, and this is when Leary drops a little bomb on him.
Yeah,
and he says, "Hey, Bill, you
were collecting for the Chinese." Which is, what put Damon in his sights, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
And Bill, again, trying to justify.
I buried that gang.
Which is true.
But we talked about this already in the beginning of this show.
Right.
That it ain't enough.
He goes, yeah, but you still did collect for them.
Yeah, and it won't happen again, Bill says.
Right.
But it did happen, he says.
And that Bill's going to come due.
Let me ask you a question about that line that Bill's going to come due. Why is Leary the one that gets to collect on that bill? Is it because he took care of his Damon problem?
That's an interesting question. I think my opinion is that I think that he sort of views himself as sort of the ultimate arbiter of justice in the Irish community.
In his world, yeah.
And he's the only one who can dispense justice.
And if we recall correctly, at one point early, mid-ish season 1, Leary said something along the lines of, well, I don't mind owning a cop.
Yeah.
So I
Oh
think
yeah, I
this
forgot
is
about that.
yeah, and this is just another reminder of that. That Bill, you're really in my pocket. Whether you can spout all the things you want to spout about, try to do a good job, be a good cop, yada yada yada. You collected for the Chinese. I know it. You know it, and your time's going to come. Interesting. Cut away back to the other bar, and Abigail now admits to Lee that she's killed men. And they're starting to get a little closer, Mike. They're this far apart from each other at the bar there.
Yeah, and then they get even closer.
In an instant, we cut away to must be some room upstairs, downstairs, or attached to the bar, because they're hot and heavy, man. It's a pretty intense sex scene.
Getting sticky.
Yeah, getting sticky. We see Lee going at it with Abigail, and that's where the scene ends. They have a pretty hot session. So now I think that solidifies what you were asking me. Why did Lee go back there? I think he liked the girl.
Now we know. Well, I was playing dumb. I try to. I presume that our audience hasn't seen the episode yet, so I try to play dumb.
No, but it was still a question though when he first showed up. They're like, "What the hell is he doing?" Right. Yeah. Back to Buckley. He's in his office, and he's being paid a visit by the reporter, Mrs. Blake's reporter, and he instantly outs Penny to Buckley. Yeah.
Right. And we go back to what you said, and you were correct that this was not a smart move on her part.
Not at all.
Or at least not a fruitful move. Not something that was going to pan out for her. And
yeah, she really needed to think that Penny's not good. Like many of the characters in this show who are good at playing the long game, Penny is not.
Yeah, she's perhaps not cynical enough.
She's right. And she's too Pollyanna, right? And she wants what she wants.
Good word.
And like justice needs to be served for her the way she deems it right. And she's finding out quickly that the world doesn't work according to our wishes, right or wrong.
Right. And there's some funny, witty dialogue here between Buckley and the newspaper man, and something like you got the sense that their relationship kind of concluded or seemingly concluded when Blake died, and then Buckley just says very wryly, goes, "Well, seems like we're still in business."
It appears we are still in business.
There's some nice wry interplay there.
Yeah. So of course, Buckley pays him to suppress the story, and he says, "What do I do? What do I say when Mrs. Blake asks me?" And I like what Buckley says here. No BS in this one. No double talk. Just tell her I scared you off. That's it. You talk to me.
With a big wad of cash.
With a big wad of cash. And the reporter very quickly, "Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor." He says it, and he's out of there. So now Buckley takes care of his possible PR problem, nips it in the bud, because that's going to be kept out of the papers. And that's a standard operating practice for Buckley, clearly, we've gathered from this scene. We are back to Assam. He's looking at that mural again. Mike, I feel like he's feeling the pressure now.
He's starting to realize that whether he wants to or not, that he has to be the hero. And I think he's ready to assume the role.
Wow, good point there. I did not consider that that's what he was putting together right away.
And as to how he came about this, maybe just seeing everything that's happened, and maybe now that his relationship with the Hop Wee is questionable at best at this point, then maybe he's seeing that maybe, he's going to take on another role.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, Mike, Atoy's words are rattling around in his head a little bit, and he's starting to understand the reality of his own situation at this point.
Yeah.
And he wants to take things into his own hands. It's a great scene coming up.
Yeah.
He barrels into the Banshee. I know. That's what I was thinking. I was like, "Oh, baby, Assam's headed to the Banshee." And I love his line when he walks in there, the only Chinese guy in a sea of Irish faces.
Who's buying?
And I like how it cuts away from who's buying to suddenly an overhead shot of Assam sitting at the table, round table by himself, drinking with a few bodies laying about the table. So they spared us having to see the butt kicking, but clearly Assam took care of business there, and no one had the ability to stop him.
Right. And then Leary shows up, and they have a little bit of interplay, a little dialogue, and
I like what
it's
Assam does when Leary comes in to the scene here. He steps forward, he comes through the crowd, and he sees Assam at the table, and Assam kind of pushes the empty chair out to invite Leary to sit.
and he pours him a drink.
And then, yeah, he pours him a drink, but they start talking first, like you said.
Mm.
You're a long way from home, Leary says.
Yeah, he goes, and then he says, he goes, well, no one, he goes, well, no one wanted to see another Irishman in Chinatown, or am I getting ahead of myself here?
Yeah, I think you're a little bit ahead of yourself, but this is where Leary is really controlling the conversation here, and he says this wasn't a good idea for you to come in here like this, and that's when Assam pours him the drink, and Leary says, "So what happens now?"
He goes, well, I'm going to finish my drink, and then I'm thinking I'll kick your Irish ass in front of all your friends here, but.
Oh man, and that's what Leary says to him. You know, you suffer from an overabundance of confidence.
Yeah, he goes, that's come up before. Yeah, and there's some good dialogue here because
Yeah,
they kind of get into the whole question about who belongs in America, right? Because
right.
Larry says that he says something to Assam, and Assam says, "And where were you born, Mr. Leary?
You got no right to be here."
Right. And then Leary points out, or Leary says, well, my people bled for this country. Your people are bleeding it dry.
Bingo.
And then Assam comes back with, well, we all came here for the same reason. Our cupboards are dry. And then he says a line that I think really pushes Leary, because we know from Leary's backstory, he says something about, he goes,
do you have children?
Yeah. And we know that Leary did at one point, but he doesn't anymore.
He hit it home right there, Assam, without knowing it. Right.
Right.
And then that's when Leary's answer is, we going to talk or we going to fight?
And they proceed to fight.
Ding, outside ding. We go. Shirts off, Mike. Yeah. And they battle. And my initial, first of all, we're getting the fight we've been waiting for and been wanting, right?
Yeah.
And what I loved about it the most is from the get-go, it's a contrast in styles.
Yeah. Bare knuckles brawling versus martial arts.
Yeah. Assam is smooth and he's got moves, right? And he's got lots of skill. Whereas, Leary is fighting like, Queensberry, Marquis de Queensberry rules, of boxing. He's gentleman Jim Corbett over there.
I don't even know if he's that. I just think of him as a brawler. I don't know if he has he's just a straight up brawler.
Oh, boxing in those days was just exactly that. It was bare knuckle brawling, and they would go for 100 rounds in those days. So Leary is definitely cut from the mold of what professional boxers were in a sense at that time, even if they didn't call it boxing just yet. So it's a great fight. Assam takes a couple of shots early on. Leary announcing that he's not to be, trifled with here.
It kind of reminded me too. Remember the early days of MMA, like when it was really just about people of different disciplines fighting each other.
Right.
Like you'd have a sumo guy versus a wrestler, karate guy versus a boxer. And
yeah.
It reminded me of that. But like you said, this was the main event we've been waiting for. Just like last season with the finale with Li Yang and Assam, we were waiting for that. And we're waiting for this one too. And
yeah, that's a good point. I forgot that the Li Yang Assam battle that we saw outside of the tournament, of course, was in the final episode. And now here we are again in a final episode. They're evenly matched though, aren't they?
Yeah, they're evenly matched here. It's the brawler versus the martial artist. And as you said, it's a contrast of styles. And that's, what is there to say about a fight? It's an epic battle. I don't know if my words can do this any justice.
Yeah. Choreographed, really well choreographed. I did catch an homage in here to Bruce Lee. At one point, Leary knocks him down. Assam falls into like the dirt, and when he gets up, he does that.
I didn't pick up on that. Okay,
Bruce Lee did it. I think in Game of Death, maybe Game of Death or Chinese Connection. I forget which one it was. And it might have been in more than one film, but that was a total Bruce Lee thing right there.
Oh, you got me there. Okay, good for you. Good catch.
Leary, though, continues to just pound Assam. And then they're exchanging haymakers. I mean, it's almost like a video game, punch for punch, back and forth.
Body blow, body blow.
Right, right. Bald Bull versus Little Joe. And Leary knocks Assam down, and he's in pretty rough shape. But Assam manages to get to his feet like the hero that he is and mounts a rally.
Well, remember, let's go back to last season's finale where he fought Lee Young. And well, after the fact, that Natoy pointed out to him why he lost, because Lee Young had something to fight for and you didn't. In this case, Assam had something to fight for. Actually, both of them, whether you agree with both views or not, they both had something to fight for. They're both fighting for their people in a way. But in this case, Assam, he finally had something. He had what he didn't have last season.
That's a good point, man. I didn't put that together, that now he's fighting with a bit of a purpose as opposed to just fighting. Right.
Right.
And because, like you said, his heart wasn't into Hopway. He didn't come to America to join a gang and be a fighter for a gang or a hatchet guy. He found himself in that situation. So the fight shifts now. The momentum has shifted here. And we see Assam bust Leary up here. He breaks his hand with a squeeze, right? Breaks Leary's hand and knocks Leary back. Leary's kind of groggy at this point.
Right.
Finally seeing the effects of the fight, and Leary's starting to take the worst of it.
Yeah. Assam is, you can start up the Rocky music. He's starting to come out on top here.
I like what Leary does here. He gets up. His hand is kind of like broken, but
by the way, did that remind you of anything?
Help me out.
Chuck Norris in right,
Return of the Dragon.
Return of the Dragon. After he gets his arm broken, and he's like, he
yes.
can't. Yeah.
Return of the good one, man. I didn't put that one together, and the reason why I don't think I did is because Leary does this thing where he takes his broken hand and he squeezes it closed, and like, I'm not gonna say he heals himself, but puts himself back into a position to be able to fight. But he's got nothing left, and this is where Assam kind of chest punches him. Like,
yeah. And that's a wrap.
Yeah, he finishes him like with a big kick, and it gets really, really quiet now. The Irish are not nearly as raucous as they were just a few moments ago.
Yeah, their hero has been defeated.
One hero has definitely overtaken the other. And then this is where Assam now gets to complete his mission, where he makes a big announcement to everyone within earshot.
He goes, if you come back to Chinatown,
stay out of Chinatown.
Yeah.
Or I'll be back with a fucking army.
Yeah.
And as you can see, an army of Assams would be much more dangerous than one Assam who was able to clean all their clocks.
Right.
So it's a great great ending to get the message across. And now Assam bloodied, right? He's kind of dressed again. He's got his jacket on, his shirt. He's covered in blood, and he's stumbling back home in the rain. And once again, what does he see as he's stumbling home?
His mural.
And that closes the circle on him being the hero that Chinatown needed, as Natoy put it.
Yep.
Scene ends, and now it's early morning. We get the sense that it's early morning, and Father June comes out of Hopway headquarters, Mike, and he's holding a suitcase.
And Chow's there.
Yeah, he's greeted by Chow. Good morning.
And he says, "You're up early," and Chow points out, "Well, I'm up late, actually."
The first time I saw the episode, when Father June said to him, "You're up early," and I remember saying, "I bet you he's up late," and then he said it. So Chow says, "Yeah, I've been up late," and he immediately sees the suitcase, puts two and two together, and he asks Father June, "Going on a trip?"
Yeah, and this scene is really just about Father June's closure. That's the way I took it. It's really just him. He seems like he's at peace and he's ready to move on. He says it's a great big country. He doesn't even really have a plan necessarily. It's a big country and he's going to go see it. And this scene wasn't very long. It was just about
respect.
It was respect. And he says to Chow, he kind of points out to him, he asks him, he goes, "You'll tell my boy?" And Chow doesn't even really say anything. He just sort of nods.
Yeah, he nods. and that's it then. And they bow respectfully to each
Yeah,
other.
not a long
Um,
scene, but an important one, and it was about Father June's closure.
yeah, Father June walking off. Another important line in this is what Chow says as they're discussing Father June's leaving Big Country. Right, Chow realizes this means it's truly the end for Father June in the Tong, and Chow, maybe to flatter him because they've had a long career together in a sense, he says to Father June, "You went out strong."
Yeah, like you said, there is definite respect here.
Absolutely. And Father June walks off, not into the sunset, into the sunrise, I guess,
Yeah,
which is very interesting. Because we all know that saying, walking off into the sunset. For him, he's walking off into the sunrise, almost as if it is his new beginning as well.
could be, could be.
Back to City Hall. Penny's at it again. She must have found out that her reporter friend isn't going to tell her story, and she storms into Mr. Buckley's office.
Yeah, she starts off with, "You bastard, you're buying reporters now." And
he goes, "Now I've been buying reporters for years. How do you think I kept your husband out of the papers?"
Buckley, always with a great line.
And she says, "You did this." And he's like, "What did I do?" He feigns. He's another one. He's great at feigning his innocence when he needs to.
But again,
go ahead.
Again, I just want to point out again, the way they're going through this, they really make the case for Buckley because Buckley's like, she goes, she points out about how Jacob is dead. He goes, "Excuse me, but with all the bodies around you, I've lost track."
Yeah, what are we talking about here? He says.
Yeah. And he correctly points out that he's sort of protecting her too, even if it's not necessarily for her benefit, but he is protecting her.
Right.
And he points out that, you got blood on your hands too, because you were involved in an altercation with your husband. And
again, she lays out all of her recent troubles.
Yeah, she lost
like how business. We did a little while ago. He lays them all out too. And that's enough for her. She's had enough.
And she slaps him.
Right across the face. And that's when Buckley pulls the move here that you're like, what? He's had enough of her at this point, and he needs to take care of his Mrs. Blake problem once and for all. And he finds a very creative way to do so.
Right. This actually reminded me, I don't know if you're a fan or if anyone's a fan, but I love the movie Fight Club.
Oh, it's of course. You actually lent me the DVD to watch the movie for the first time.
Did I?
20 some odd years ago.
Oh, absolutely. Wow. Okay.
Back when we were working in radio together.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's why I saw that movie.
Okay. So do you remember the part sort of in the middle of the movie where the narrator, played by Edward Norton, he's going to his boss and saying that basically, I'm not going to go too much into this, but he worked for an automotive company and they were doing some shady things. And he goes, "Listen, to keep my mouth shut, you just keep me on the payroll and you never have to see me again." The guy says, "What? Get the fuck out of my office." Edward Norton punches himself in the face. He starts beating himself up. And he's like, "That's right. Why are you doing this to me?" Anyway, back to this. Now we see Buckley do the exact
same move.
And he pulls a knife and you think, "Oh my God, is he going to kill Penny?" Right. A letter opener. You think, "My God, he's going to stab Penny." No. He stabs himself.
Like right here. And he immediately falls to the ground and screams out in pain. He's a good actor. I mean, that shit must have hurt. Let's get real. Whether he's, did it to himself or not. But Penny, like, again, she's swimming in the wrong part of the pool because Buckley does this and you knew right away. And we knew right away as viewers what he was up to, but she's still like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this? What are you doing?" Right. She's not connecting it. And then Buckley's assistant comes in, like his secretary comes in. She sees the horror, and in a moment, in come the cops.
Right. And she's just like the boss in Fight Club, who has Edward Norton bloody at his feet. He doesn't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Same thing here. So I got Fight Club flashbacks here.
Nice. And Buckley's laying there. "She stabbed me." So he immediately frames her verbally now, and the cops grab her, and out the door they go. End of scene.
I gotta say, as bad as I feel for Penny, I'm like, chef's kiss to Buckley for just playing that one.
I mean, the first time I saw this, I was like, "What?"
Yeah, 'cause you see what you know about what happened with her and Blake. You see the menacing look in Buckley's eyes. He's got the knife in his hand and he's coming towards her. And then, well, next thing you know,
It's in his own shoulder.
it's in his
Amazing.
own shoulder. Yeah.
Amazing. And what kind of, you know, you got to be some kind of wacko to be sticking yourself with a knife. You need some loose screws, right? And a high tolerance for pain to be able to pull something off like that. Because I actually sat there after the scene and thought to myself, could I stab myself with a knife if I had to? Hell no.
I don't even know if I could do a stapler in the finger.
Yeah, man, forget that. End of scene though. Penny's now maybe in a little bit of trouble.
She tried to kill the mayor.
We're back to Bill. Yeah, that's two mayors now.
She was an accessory to an
I didn't even
assault.
think of that in that context. We're back to Bill now, and he's obviously left Leary's, probably thinking about what Leary told him. And when he gets home, he finds Lucy waiting for him.
Yeah.
Turn of events here.
Yeah, and Lucy had heard about what happened. She wanted to check up on them and make
You look
sure he was
terrible,
okay.
she says.
Yeah, and we can see that they're sort of reconciling. He's apologizing to her, and obviously Lucy, his wife, and his kids are a weak point for Bill. That's probably where the good part of him is.
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and assume. And if anyone can bring out the best out of him besides Lee, it's
Lucy.
her.
Yeah,
it's Lucy.
He asks her if she's coming home, and she says not right now. So I don't know if she said she wanted to check on him because of the riots, right? But then Bill starts again with like his lame excuses. I wanted to do good. I don't know how this happened. He's really trying to smooth talk her. And Lucy's way past any of that having an effect. Right. I'll change, please. He's rolling out the carpet.
Right. And then he just sort of breaks down.
Yeah. He cries.
He sobs. He cries. He sobs. And
she's unmoved, though.
Well, I got the sense, and again, it might just be the romantic in me. I got the sense that she was sort of she's melting a little bit. She's getting there. I think she'll get there.
Well, her coming on her own volition to check on him is that warming, right? The crack in the ice, for sure. So obviously, Lucy still gives a crap about the big lug, regardless of his faults, and she made sure that he's all right, and maybe seeing him in this, I'm going to use the word again, contrite state, might further help her feel like he's being genuine here, authentic. Yeah. I don't know that he is, though, because we've heard all these lines from Bill before, but that is where that scene ends. And maybe there's a chance for Bill to get his family back. We're now at the mayor's house, Mayor Blake's house, and we see Sophie, and she turns and sees Buckley at the home, and he's got his arm in a sling now, so he's obviously been attended to, and he's there to share some news with her.
Yeah, so your sister's had an episode, and this is a pretty quick scene, but then I'm sorry?
He goes, I hope she can come home soon.
And then we cut away and we see that Penny is been strapped to a bed.
It's amazing. Like it's a crazy scene, right?
Right. It just cuts right to her. She's in a bed. She's strapped down. And she's screaming. And part of me is wondering, did she actually genuinely lose it after that? Did she go through so much trauma?
Well, she was a sort of asleep. Like we see a close in on her, and she opens up her eyes, and the camera quickly, from a high level pans up, and you can see.
Right.
She's tied to the bed. She's in they called it a sanitarium back then, I think. Right. And she starts screaming. I don't know that she's lost it. It's probably part of it, but I think it's the horror of realizing where she was, because I'm getting the sense that she was sedated up until the point that she opened her eyes and realized that she was screaming in this. And the crazy thing, Mike, that was a very disturbing scene for as quickly as it went by. When she screams, like all the other ladies in like the sanitarium all start screaming too. And it's like this wail of screams that were just a little too much for me and my ears.
Yeah, that was tough to watch.
Difficult. Because now you're like, what? Blake did this to her? Not Blake. Buckley did this to her? Holy crap. So they didn't lock her up and put her in jail. They didn't arrest her, Mike, which they could have easily done. Buckley took a different route here.
Maybe a little bit of compassion.
No, I think it's worse. I think he's playing mental torture with her now
Hmm.
because he could have just
Yeah.
locked her up and arrested her and put her in a cell. Instead, he's
Hmm.
got her in a, I feel like, a much worse situation because there's no
Hmm.
law or trial or anything that's going to get her out of there.
Hmm. That's a good point. Okay. We'll see we'll see what happens with Penny, I guess, in season three.
We shall see. Scene cuts away. It's Buckley's carriage. We see it in the night, trotting down the street, and it stops where Buckley likes to go pick up prostitutes. We saw that in an episode earlier in the season where he picked up the redhead and washed her hair, bathed her. I believe he's probably going to achieve the same end here and try to get some action for the evening. But when the door opens, Mai Ling enters, and Buckley's very surprised by this.
Yeah, yeah. She goes, I know I'm not your type. And then he points out she's a long way from home. And
So are you, apparently, she says so. Mai Ling pulling another card from up her sleeve.
literally pulling something from her sleeve this time.
Yep.
We now find out what her Pinkerton had. We finally got the payoff on that.
Yeah. The
And
drunken PI.
The drunken PI, yeah. She pulls out a picture of him from the war.
The Civil War.
From the Civil War, right. And he was not on the Union side.
Wearing the wrong uniform.
He's
Turns
wearing
out
the wrong
Buckley
uniform.
was a Confederate.
Yeah. Which
So
we
that
didn't
scene
know.
where we saw him getting his leg cut off, amputated earlier in the season, that was a Civil War scene, which we surmised. But now we're finding out that his injuries were sustained fighting for the losing side, fighting for the South. Which,
Yeah.
you start thinking about that, right, Mike? Before we get on to the rest of their conversation. Buckley, a Confederate, now operating in California, hiding his past. And when you juxtapose that to, say, Lee, who also came from the South and is in San Francisco and was also hiding his past. I find it very interesting. But with Buckley, though, it's a little more nefarious because he's in a position of power. And if the word of him being a Confederate gets out, it's the end of his campaign. It's the end of his career.
Right. And at least with Lee, with his accent, you knew right away what side he was going to be on the war.
Yeah.
With Buckley, there's no discernible accent.
Right. Buckley does a good job of covering up his trail.
Yeah.
And when Mai Ling gives him the photo, she says, I have two more and they're for sale. Buckley's answer, what do you want?
And she goes, I want the same thing that you do. I want my enemies to be your enemies. I want blood in the streets.
And that's it. That's where the scene ends. She wants blood in the streets. The very next scene, here's Buckley organizing a mobilization on Chinatown. He's got to do what his new boss, Mai Ling, just told him.
Right. Yeah, and we see Chief Flanagan questioning him, and I don't want to send my men into their world. And he goes, well, no, he goes, it's our world, but we're not going to play by their rules.
Right.
And he's basically talking about using the the legal ways to shut down the power of the law. Which kind of in the back of my mind as I'm watching this, I'm like, well, why didn't they just do that to begin with? I mean, if there is something, even in a crooked police department or a crooked government, still got to arrest people for doing the wrong thing now and then, right? So that was my question in this scene. But okay, I know I see where this is going though.
Yeah, they're looking to choke off the Hopway cash supply.
Yeah,
by closing all these businesses, by enforcing ordinances, whether they're occupation, too many people in a residence, unlicensed laundromats, businesses operating outside of code, whatever they need to do to enforce laws to close people down, as opposed to coming in with a show of physical force, they use a different kind of force.
Right.
And that's when, as this meeting is going on, who barges in? Our new politician in town, Mr. Leary. And he makes it essentially, this is his like political debut coming out party, Mike.
Yeah, he lost one war, but it kind of led, as the old saying goes, one door closes, another one opens, and he's opened another door. He's joined the political world, and he's going to use his political muscle as well. I mean, it's actually kind of blown up in Buckley's face, because Buckley was the first one to bring this up to him. And here he's now in Buckley's face, and he's going to make his demands known.
And Buckley says, Mr. Leary, this this board does not recognize you. And he goes, oh, I think they recognize me just fine. And then he makes his announcement that he's Dylan Leary and he's from the Working Man's Party of California.
Which I believe, I looked this up a while ago, that the person who Leary is based on, that was the party that he did represent or he was a part of. I think that was a real thing.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So a little bit of truth, history tied into the threads of this story. So now Leary is sitting in the room where the police and the City Hall fathers are making their plans for the assault on Chinatown, the next assault on Chinatown. And I find that to be a very strange dynamic because, all right, they're all criminals in a sense, but Leary's the one outward criminal out of the bunch here. And yet he's sitting there amongst the legitimate.
Yeah.
All right, scene ends. Now we see Young Jun on the streets of Chinatown. And now he's looking up at the Assam mural.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously this has everyone's attention. How can you miss it, right? And
gigantic.
And my thought process here was like, okay, what is this doing to him? What is he thinking?
Because
on the one hand, he's got, yeah, go ahead. I'll let you take it.
Well, I mean, there's no word spoken here. He's smoking a cigarette. He's looking at the mural. You see his face and he turns and he spits to the ground. So going back to that scene with him and Assam said, don't take too long to think about it. This is part of Young Jun thinking about it. And that big giant mural up there means a lot of things. And the number one thing that it means is that you may not be running the show as much as you think you are, Young Jun.
That's what I took from it.
Yeah. And that's where the scene ends there too. It's a very powerful wordless scene because now we kind of got the sense of where Young Jun stands here, or at least where his feelings are at the moment as we come quickly to a close on the season of the episode. We're now back to prison. Final scene of the show, final scene of the season, and Zing is in his cell. We haven't seen him in a long time in this show, and he's finally back. And he is being served his food. They tell him to hang on to the bars while they open the cage. They're scared of him. You can tell the cops are scared of him because they open the cage quickly and they kind of throw his food in and they close it just as quickly.
Yeah. And then we see, and I believe this was Alcatraz, which
yes.
I guess Alcatraz did exist back then.
Yeah. Yeah, they did give us a shot of the island, didn't they? In the prison. They did give us that shot.
Yeah, to check out the brand new Alcatraz, state of the art, newest technology.
Oh my God, it was a shiny new facility at that point, probably.
But apparently, it wasn't constructed too well because in the very last scene, we see Zing realizes that the bars are loose, and you see it shake just a little bit.
His window bars.
Yeah, shake, his window bars
shake, and then the scene goes black, and you can still hear it. And that's where I was like, ooh, Zing's going to get out and come on with season 3 already. And that is where the season ends, Mike, and the show and the episode for the second season. And I mean, man, what a way to wrap it up. So many things happened in a 53-minute span here where it sets up for what could be or what will be an amazing season 3.
Yeah. Yeah. So many threads that concluded, but also so many threads that opened up, and you see just that linear story just keeps going on and on.
Right. And the Myling Buckley story has gotten more interesting. The Penny and Buckley story has gotten more interesting. Everything has Young Jun now being in charge and unsure.
Right.
Is an interesting dynamic to take into the next season as well. Right. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the writers lay this all out for us as we turn the corner, Mike, into season 3.
Can't wait. What a ride it's been so far. It's not over yet. And like I said, we're hoping for season 4. I'm cautiously optimistic about that.
Same here. And also cautiously optimistic about getting other actors from the show to join us to talk about Warrior. We did have Perry Young already. If you haven't caught that one, go back to our page, and it's only about 3 episodes prior to this one, so you should be able to find it. And we will try to get more people on here. In the meantime, please like and subscribe to our show if you haven't done so. Tell your friends to like and subscribe too. We'd really love to build up this audience. But in the meantime, we will see you for episode 1 of season 3. We're turning the corner to the last 10 episodes, Mikey. 3.1. Thanks, everybody. We're out of here. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.